Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, saha viryam karavavahai, tejasvinavaditam astu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with a great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily argue with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Well, this time of year, of course, is significant for a number of different people throughout the world. And so, for example, the Bengali New Year arises at this moment in time. Tamil New Year was the other day. And of course, it's natural because this time of the year is really spring in many countries. Where I come from in Zimbabwe, we don't have the luxury of 4 seasons. And in some areas, there are only 2 seasons, summer and hell, because it's so hot. But I'm delighted to see, and was delighted to see when I first came to Ireland, how beautiful the seasons are, and why many, many festivals are orientated around these seasons in the northern hemisphere of the world. The summer hemisphere also has some seasons, and of course there'll be the opposite to the northern hemisphere. We stick to the northern hemisphere for the time being. Well, I know in Ireland, and I'm sure it's in place in many parts of the world, where all of a sudden buds are seen, probably from about March onwards. The winter is left behind, and the winter is seen in pre-Christian cultures, for example, as a kind of preparation for something that is new, leading up to the sunshine and glory of summer. And here outside the ashram, we'll find so many beautiful flowers, tulips, daffodils, and many other flowers are starting to bloom. So it is seen to be, Vashant and so on, seen to be a period of time that gives us a new period of hope. We were able to see nature's glory and beauty in a fresh, newly born way. In fact, in most of Europe, up until, I don't know, maybe 500-600 years ago, the 1st of April was the beginning of the new year. And this was changed to the 1st of January. Of course, many people continue to celebrate the 1st of April as New Year because people don't like change too much. But those who had adopted the new calendar would have made some fun of those still celebrating on the 1st of April. And this is the origin, of course, of 1st of April being April Fool's Day in Northern European cultures. So how do we relate this to early Vedanta philosophy, and more importantly, the practice whereby we can lead ourselves progressively to a realization of the truth that gives us a sublime sense of freedom? That's our aim, that's our goal in Vedanta. And the process of it is also aimed at that direction. Well, let's start off really with the Judeo-Christian traditions, because I'm speaking from Ireland. And in Ireland, and most of Europe anyway, where Christianity dominates, then we have to take cognizance of why this period is so significant. And we can't acknowledge that until and unless we acknowledge the Feast of Passover amongst our Jewish friends. So historically, there was a period of enslavement according to the Jewish traditions. From the historical point of view, we can argue whether it's true or not. That's not important. because history has to lead us to a deeper dimension and understanding of things. So let us start off with spring, just that spring itself. Spring gives us a new outlook on life, and we can resonate with a period of new birth inside us. In fact, every time we have an intimate contact with our own inner dimension, that is the divinity within us, is a new opportunity for a new encounter. And when we do this through steady practice, it becomes increasingly joyful. There's the old joke, of course, of the urban person who goes into the country and with great exuberance says, spring in the air. And the country person looks quizzically and says, no, why should I? In the idea of slavery itself for the Jewish people has a profound meaning for all of us. Because if our goal is freedom, then are we bound? Are we in slavery? Our Vedanta philosophy says it looks like that, but actually you are always free. There was a person who I had to correspond with this morning in an awkward situation. And if I go into that situation, will it be difficult for me, was the question. And the answer is no, not if we view ourselves as a lion or lioness. Not if we view ourselves in a correct perspective, reminding ourselves continuously of our own inner glory. In the language of Christianity, our kingdom of heaven within us, our birthright. That means we are wandering in a strange land. We can take it like that. And the mind should be persuaded to go back home. There's the familiar story. Some say Vishnu, some say Indra, never mind. Either one will do. Who came as the incarnation, of course Vishnu came as an incarnation of a boar, Varaha, to rescue the world. So we can call it, we can see it as a pig. The pigs are not very choosy about their environment, and they're not very choosy about what they eat. In Zimbabwe, once more referring my own home country, there is a research station called Henderson Research Station. And there firsthand, I have witnessed the diet that pigs are given. And anything that we throw away, they will eat, including human wastage of all kinds. They will eat it. And then, of course, man decides, let me eat the pig. He has no idea what the pig ate. It's not his concern, particularly as it's presented in a supermarket in a package, a plastic package. So this incarnation starts enjoying the life of a pig, having a Mrs. Pig and other piglets. And naturally, the deities in heaven are highly concerned because Vishnu has to sustain the world. It's his job. Part of Vishnu will be the other avenues as well of creation and dissolution. If one of these aspects goes astray, the whole thing is doomed. Nothing works properly. And so how to persuade? With arguments they persuaded. Why are you living this life? Please come back to our abode, to heaven. And with various arguments, no, I have a family now. I'm enjoying life, rolling in the mud and eating all kinds of things. I've never been so happy and I've never been so fat. And eventually Shiva comes with his trident and destroys the pig body. And Vishnu looks back on the past events. Oh, couldn't believe. Was that me? And we are all that. Our divine nature is obscured. It's not that we are in slavery. It is that we perceive ourselves to be bound and limited. And even that negative side, we put in a closet. We ignore that side of things and look on the positive side. Now, I'm not saying that life is all like that. I'm not giving a moral argument and saying you should abandon our life and the world. On the contrary, but we should see things in its perspective. And when we look at the manifestations of flowers and the warmth that is being generated at this time of year, we can fill our hearts with a sense of great joy. And when we fill our hearts with joy, all our darkness disappears. All the pain and suffering gets eclipsed. And it's not that we are not being realists either, but we have to understand things for what they really are, put things in their true perspective. And putting things in their true perspective requires revaluing the environment, revaluing our body, our minds, the whole field in which we operate. And this revaluation is technically called viveka, discernment, discrimination. We are carefully watching things. We are vigilant about everything. And so the story of the Exodus is a very symbolic story. Whether it's historically true or not, we're not concerned with it. But going against all unfair odds that enable us to be enslaved. The story goes that the Lord, or the angel of the Lord, passed over certain houses and painted those houses with the blood of a lamb. And with great instructions, be prepared for travel. Gird your loins and take your baggage with you. And hastily eat a meal and have unleavened bread. That is, don't give any refinement to what you eat. Now, I hazard a guess that historically, the unleavened bread really comes from very ancient Middle Eastern custom of the harvest of the barley, and the barley would have been preserved. And to celebrate the harvesting of all of that, of the grain, we put it into unleavened bread, as is the ancient custom. Don't add anything more to it. And celebrate this harvest festival. Anyway, before we enjoy the harvest and before we enjoy the sublime goal of our life, which we can describe as a land of milk and honey, we have to go through a desert. And the Exodus is all about going through the hardships of a desert, even though food is provided. 40 years, they say, they wandered through the desert lands. And initially, of course, they were escaping the 10th plague that was visited upon their enslavers in Egypt, the Egyptians. So they were a kind of chosen people who, because of a turn in their mind, a determination to get into a realm of freedom, that they escaped all the effects of what we might call bad karma. That in any action that is essentially egocentrically organized, selfishly organized. That's our principal enslaver. And so their destiny all the time being led with a sense of faith through hardships, with an element of patience. Swami Vivekananda gives us 3 aspects, all beginning with the letter P, that we have to encourage and cultivate. Patience. Before that, even purity of mind. Purity, patience, and persistence. Same too in normal, so-called normal life. Purity of mind has to be there, seeing things in their true light, without the blemish of the deleterious elements that disturb our minds, such as anger, hatred, jealousy, all stemming from an egocentric position. How to control that? We put a new valuation on life. We see it as a springtime. We see it as a period and an environment of hope. Where does hope come from? Or how does hope spring forth, excuse the pun? It springs forth because we know the end and the means are being fully supplied. The inspiration to move forward is there. And the requirement is this purity of mind, where thoughts and words and deeds all match, and they're working in a harmonious way, in a non-disturbing way. And then, of course, this patience has to be there. Imagine traveling through the desert with all the harshness of desert storms and the harshness of sand particles violently hitting the skin, going in the eyes and what have you. And yet on the other side, there's nothing so sweet as the silence of the desert. So in the same way, our whole life is full of opposites, good and bad, pleasure and pain, praise and blame, all of these opposites, hot and cold, all these opposites are there with us. It requires patience and diligence to go through that. It requires persistence, not to deviate in any way whatsoever. And so to celebrate this, the Jews have this annual festival on the basis of a lunar calendar only, so that the harvest is properly celebrated, comes in its due season. And Christians have adopted the same thing in their Christianity. Historically, Jesus would have, as an acclaimed Messiah, he would have gone through the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is where the main temple was. And the events then of what we call Holy Week begin. And so Holy Week is really celebration of a model that leads us to a methodology that culminates in freedom. We can take it in that way. And so we remember not just the historical account, but also what is the inner meaning of it. And again, the symbolism is a great light that is leading us out of the desert, leading us out of despondency, difficulties, harshness, leading us out of an enslaved condition into the bright sunlight of freedom, with the first glimmer of it being spring. And you, of course, when spring itself is fulfilled, in other words, when the pure fullness of joy comes out, when the glory of the sun comes out, on a Sunday, on a day that is dedicated to the sun. Every day of the week has a prime minister. So Monday, the moon presides. On Tuesday, Mars presides. On Wednesday, Mercury presides. On Thursday, Jupiter presides. On Friday, Venus presides. I'll put this into vernacular language also. Saturday is Saturn's day. But on Sunday, the sun blazes forth. So the Christians adopted the Sol Invictus Day for this glorious, glorious revelation that will happen tomorrow in the Christian calendar. In the meantime, what is Jesus doing going into Jerusalem? Palms are being waved because the gospel writers are emphasizing the role of a Messiah, some light that can uplift us, some model we can look up to. And this model, firstly, is a model of glory, but also humility. And the donkey represents this humility because we expect a great, glorious king coming to rescue us politically, to come in all glory in a chariot or something like that, or at least a horse, but no, a donkey is selected. And we can find many of the references to all of these things in the Jewish texts. So he's greeted. Palms are being waved. There's another dimension to this, and that is maybe the barley again comes out, the celebration of barley. Anyway, it's a Messianic entrance. And from that moment on, a Lenten season is starting to be fulfilled in preparation for this, the most significant and important day on the Christian calendar. I was having a discussion with somebody the other day, a non-Christian, maybe a week or so ago, maybe more. And this person was surprised to know that the period of Easter is the Christian celebration. Oh, I thought Christmas was it? No. Christmas may be celebrated more widely and more commercially, but from the Christian point of view, Easter is the culmination of the liturgical calendar. It is the supremo day in the celebration of Christianity because for them it marks a new turning point for mankind, for them. Now, if we have a little bit more universalism, we may understand things in a little different light. The whole principle of avatara or incarnation comes in. That why should it just be one particular period in human history where this happens? And I'll always remember the most revered Swami Ranganathananda saying, I feel sorry for the Christians. Why is that, Maharaj? I asked. Well, because you see, Christians, their God can only have one son. Ours can have as many sons as he likes. With a twinkle in his eye, he said this, in a non-offensive way, of course. But this is true, and this has now brought us to a point where the principle of love can be turned against those who are, say, not of the same theological persuasion. And this has resulted in a lot of pain and misery. But that shouldn't take away from us the significant events that we can gain an insight into and celebrate along with our Christian brethren. So the Lenten season lasts until Thursday of this week. And then that leads us to the Easter, what is called Triduum, 3 days celebrating. But throughout the week, the contemplation is like this. On Monday, it would have been seeing how this Jesus comes into this Jerusalem like a great hero and celebrated. The events will tell us it is also like a lamb to the slaughter and reminds us once more of the Exodus. This is a very extreme position, and yet it acts as a wonderful model. The shepherd who guided people as a teacher, he himself is now being led like a lamb to the slaughter, willingly, not protesting, giving us an example. Then what would we be slaughtering? Should we be slaughtering ourselves? Yes. This is an extreme position, or is taken as an extreme position by most people. You mean I will annihilate myself? Culminating on the symbolism of a cross, giving up my physical being. You see, when a person is dying, they give up much more than the people who are sitting around being bereaved. They're losing one person, but the dying person is losing their bank account, their family, their house, all their possessions, their body, all their experiences, all their achievements, everything. And yet, interestingly enough, the person who is dying, so experts tell us, at that last moment will willingly give up, will willingly slide across the border, will willingly glide across the psychophysical realm into a realm of peace. It's not a misfortune for the dying person. It may be taken as a misfortune for those being left behind. But the person who has everything to lose is an accepting position eventually. I've seen tragically some people fight against it, clinging to life. This is one of the final kleshas that Patanjali Yoga Sutras offers us. Obstacles. And then finally, when people reconcile and leave off that obstacle, they find a gateway to peace, tranquility. It's a wonderful thing for them. And I have seen many people at their last moment in my own lifetime. I've seen them how at the last moment their eyes open, even those who are blind, physically blind, and their eyes open as if they are seeing something. And they are completely at peace, totally at peace. They're a wonderful, wonderful sight to see. It's a wonderful presence to be a witness to. And so, lamb to the slaughter willingly. On what basis? On the basis of spirit of generosity. I give up my life for you. Not you as an individual, but let's expand it for the whole of humanity. And so these great shining waves that rescue us, that save us, that lead us to our freedom, have no problem about giving everything up for the benefit of all. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be blissful. Every Hindu prayer, actually, that is repeated is not for oneself. It is for the good and benefit of all beings. That's the spirit of it. And then on the Tuesday, the light of the nations is highlighted so that Christ, his message, may be brought to all beings, not in a narrow theological way, not in a narrow sectarian way, but if you have access to the truth, should surely be in a position to spread it everywhere. This is the kind of missionary endeavor that we're involved in as Vedantic missionaries, to spread the message of freedom, your own birthright, to every possible being, to shout it from the rooftops was Swami Vivekananda's position, not to keep it quiet. And Jesus made sure people understood that by saying, you cannot hide, nor should you, your light under a bushel or a bed. It should be self-evident for everybody to see. One question many people ask, how do I get my children to orientate themselves toward, let us say, simple prayer or meditation, morning and evening? What should we do? Well, firstly, what you should not do is force anybody. But children learn by example. You become the model. Become the shining example, and others will follow. If you're not the shining example, then there's a possibility that there may be some hypocrisy. In many, many families, traditional Orthodox families, religion is entirely destroyed because of hypocrisy. Please follow these rules and regulations. Do this, do that. A kind of desperation. I came across somebody who is suffering from bereavement recently. I said, what are you doing in your spiritual life? They read off or recited a whole list of things they were doing. And I just was astonished. I said, that's more than what I'm doing, and I'm a monk. It strikes me you're doing too many things. Why are you doing that? Oh, because, and it turned out, you see, a kind of insurance policy. If I do X, Y, and Z, then things will work in my favor. God will like me. I'll please God. I'll have done my duty. Where did you get this idea from? Probably from your parents or those people who you revered. And they said, you have to change your inner culture and do this, do that. But it's assumed, it's taken for granted that you'll do it with absolute sincerity, that you'll mobilize your own heart. It's not an intellectual exercise. It's not a question of gymnastics. How will we gain our physical health? You have to do exercise. But if I don't like exercise, then what? Put yourself in an environment where you do like it. If you're walking, walk in a park on a spring day when the flowers are in full bloom, as we have it at the moment, and where the sun is increasing the temperatures. Don't walk and think, when will this hell be over? No, walk with a sense of freedom and delight. And then you'll want to walk. So our journey should be like a spring journey, full of delight, full of joy, full of love. Not as a penance, not as a requirement. And also, during this week, people enacting, going through the drama from the magnificent entry into Jerusalem and then the day-to-day events, and seeing this betrayal. Two things. One, betrayal by Judas, selling him for a mere 30 silver pieces. And the other, Peter, who denies, I don't know this person. 3 times he denies. So in our own life, we have to deal with this weakness, replacing it with an element of strength and confidence and truth. Not only to avoid betraying the truth, but also avoiding denying the truth of our own nature, the truth that we are invincible, the truth that our real home is eternal. And then on the Wednesday of Holy Week, we continue that 30 pieces of silver. The awkward question was given by, I have told the story before, and it seems to be around King John in England. And it was written by, as many things were written by a Nonny Mouse, whoever that is. Anyway, the long and the short of the story is, one abbot was challenged by a king. If you don't answer these questions, then I will take all your land. These were awkward questions. And one of them was, I, the king, what am I worth? And the person who eventually answered the question successfully said, you're worth, your majesty, 29 pieces of silver. Is that all, says the king? Well, you see, Christ was sold for 30. We're only giving you 1 less. Well, he couldn't disagree with that. And then this beginning of this 3rd day happens on Thursday evening. For the Christian, it is dying. Our death is destroyed. That seems a kind of paradox. It seems a contradiction in terms. But the saying goes, dying, he destroyed our death, and rising, he restored our life. It's a wonderful, wonderful concept. It's not that death is a destruction of something. It gives rise to a new life. Even if you don't think you have attained your fullness of freedom in this life, still if you're moving toward it, there are many people that I have met where their animals, dogs for example, dogs and cats, decide that somehow they will allow themselves be petted by holy people. They come in and the holy person strokes them, strokes the dog. Same thing with cows. Ramana Maharshi used to feed and have a pet cow. Mahapurush Maharaj, Swami Shivananda, he had a dog. Don't tell me that these animals will not benefit from this holy association in their following life. They will. It's a Tibetan fancy that dogs are actually lamas who have just temporarily gone down a little bit. In the next life, they'll come up because they keep company in the Lamesri. And then finally, of course, to yesterday, where this, of course, the Last Supper is also celebrated there on the Thursday, and all of those historical events from the Christian point of view are enacted. And it is a remembrance, so that carries through ritualistically. A reenactment of that is done in various Christian churches. On a daily basis it's done, and gives us the opportunity for, as all ritualistic activities give us, whether it's puja, whether you call it formally puja, or whether they call it Christian Mass or whatever it is all leading us to a sense of mystic union, internal union, a final yoga. And then, of course, Good Friday was yesterday. St. John's account of the Passion is more reflective and more theological in its nature. And he's there emphasizing the obedience to divine will, letting go, let thy will be done, regardless of how painful it might be, a surrendering, knowing that all your energy is divine energy in the first place. There is nothing supplied by you individually. And we have to be submissives to divine will. We have to become an open channel for divine grace to flow through and manifest itself. The kingship is emphasized, the kingship of a victory on the crucifix. This was very difficult for people in the Roman Greco world to understand. There was a famous cartoon discovered of a human figure on a cross, a Roman torture, means of torture and execution, with a donkey's head. Clearly, it was a ridicule of Christians and their Christian God. Can't understand. How can a God go through this? Can't be a God, surely. But Christians will see it as a victory. The victory over the psychophysical self. The victory over an ego. So the hour of death is seen as a triumph, not as a difficulty, not as a way for sorrow. Of course, all those who love Jesus were sorrowful, not knowing that death is not the end. Same thing with us. We have become very sorrowful because of our attachment to family and friends. This is not a criticism, it's just a statement of a natural human sentiment. But natural human sentiment has to learn a more enlightened way of thinking. The human life is not a full stop, it's a comma, and things continue. But it does give us an idea of how we should feel the pain of others. For this reason, Good Friday, as it's called, good meaning God, really, God's Friday, that's the idea of it, is actually a very somber day. It gives us the opportunity to tune ourselves into the suffering of others. If we can't do that, we can never understand it. If you want to comfort somebody from bereavement, you yourself will really have to go through it. Those people who comfort people by saying, don't worry, he's gone to a better place and so on, they really haven't gone through the phenomena. The most painful thing in human life, a human death. Naturally, we are not oblivious to all the world news around us and to see the great pain that is happening everywhere. Not just to gloss it over. It's easy to gloss it over and say, well, that's far off. Right near here, I have my own problems. No, I don't want to get myself involved in other people's problems. Until those problems creep up and impact us on our own doorstep, then all of a sudden we become empathetic. We tune into another person's suffering. Will it drag the mind down if we're always tuned into another person's suffering? No, because if compassion comes about, it elevates the mind. Now, in Christian devotion, there are some who have so much love and devotion for their Ishtadevata, their ideal of God in Christianity is Jesus, that they will take on the sufferings, as it were, out of pure love and compassion. They want to feel what their chosen ideal is feeling. And also the positive side of it, that is, the generous side of it, which says, I'm happy to take these sufferings on for others. Such saints have been known to even adopt the sufferings physically. We call this stigmata. one of the most popular saints in Ireland, celebrated almost everywhere, would be that of Padre Pio, Franciscan monk, who willingly had these marks of the crucifixion, the stigmata, actually felt the wounds intensely. St. Francis of Assisi is the first recorded person who had these, who was given the gift. You consider them as a gift, not as a penance. If we think it's a bad thing as penance, we won't get it. But if we accept it as a gift, to say, okay, let me be Christ-like in every single sense, and let me feel his spirit of generosity for the whole world, let us do it. And then today, all of this leads up to the subject matter. Subject matter is vigilance. In accord with ancient tradition, this night tonight is one of vigil, where we watch and we pray. The great theologian and great doctor of Christianity, Saint Augustine, called it the mother of all vigils. The Gospel of St. Luke reminds faithful people to have their lamps burning ready. And in today's thought, I thought about that and put as the image burning lamp. A photograph of our own burning lamp that we light during our evening Vespers time. And what is the purpose of it? We are waiting. This is the second P that Swami Vivekananda mentions. Not only purity, but patience. We wait. In the depths of meditation, this is a very beautiful, intense vigil. There comes a point where we stop, where we listen, where we wait, and where we see this inner revelation come out. God's voice, the voice of silence, giving us some inspiration, giving us a guidance. Against all the prattle that we normally hear. I was reminded quite recently, maybe a few days ago, I was contemplating one of the glaciers, one of the obstacles, or not obstacles, I should say, one of the classifications of disturbances in the mind, what we call chitta, mind stuff. There are 5 versions of these oscillations and vibrations in the mind that can become disturbing to us. These 5 are compatible with the 5 kinds of brain waves that neuroscience will identify, broadly speaking. And one of them is verbal delusion. And I had often thought, verbal delusion, what a strange description of a variation in the mind, of a certain vibration in the mind, a certain vritti, a certain disturbance, a certain whirlpool. Because you see, you can take it superficially. Verbal delusion, you misunderstand what somebody says. Yes, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is to misunderstand your own perception of things. And that requires imagination. You can imagine that all kinds of things happen. You can imagine that somebody is doing all kinds of outrageous things. I also thought how Swami Vivekananda, before he became Swami Vivekananda, of course, how his father died and left the family in awkward, difficult circumstances. He registered that as the most painful period of his life, the most difficult period of his life. And one of those difficulties was that those people who knew him and admired his character spread all kinds of rumors against him. He's become an atheist, he's become this, he's become that, he's become immoral, all kinds of things. And one of the key components is a kind of superposition where the imagination goes wild. What if this happened? What if that happened? Let's say, for example, you're a mother, and supposing your teenage daughter is out late. And then the mind goes in all kinds of different directions. What happened if this? What happened if that? And eventually the daughter returns. Why are you so late? Oh, I missed the bus. And then managed to get a taxi. Oh, all right, fine. So we have this capacity to fearfully and in a doubting way superimpose our own fears on something and blow something out of proportion through our imagination. So we require in all circumstances a sense of vigilance. This mother of all vigils, we have to watch the mind in every circumstance. We have to watch for the moment where we are likely, or where life is likely to slip away. We have to prepare for it. We have to keep our lamp burning. But mainly we have to watch the mind. The last moment of the death is the first moment of the next adventure in life. Be careful what you think, but every moment is the last moment. Every second is the last moment. What is the state of mind at any given moment? Right now, even now as I'm talking, what is the state of mind that we have? Now we have a good psychology because the psychology of the Sankhyas is adopted regardless of the system and says you have three categories. You have three in-trays, if you will, that you can classify whatever condition the mind is in at any given moment. Will it be sattvic? Will it be pure? Will it be full of illumination and joy? Or will it be rajasic, full of egocentrism? Any activity, outgoing activity, for gain, for personal gain. A selfish position disguised as advancing my career, advancing my prosperity. Is there anything wrong in that? Nothing wrong in it. We have to make sure we don't, bring up our traditional sense of morality and immorality and all of those kinds of things. No. What is the best thing to do for everybody? What gives us the maximum amount of strength for everyone? And I'm just a drop in it. What gives us the best chance for an opening, for a free movement toward our freedom? So this form of rajas that we call it, egocentric thought and action, full of energetic, outgoing energy, is necessary for some activities. It should not be destroyed completely, but the overriding sense should be one of illumination, harmony, peace. That should be the overriding sentiment in the mind. And if we find then on the stage of our mind this egocentric position, we acknowledge it, we thank it, we are patient with it, we persevere with it, and we guide the energy higher, upwards, always upwards, to a higher position. A sense of sportingly doing this, being vigilant at any given moment. What is the state of my mental field? What players are on it at the moment? And will I allow, and how much will I allow? And then push it up as high as you can. Play that kind of game. And then is there dullness in the mind? Is there laziness? Is there depravity? Is there darkness? Are the emotions so depraved that it drags me down into complete darkness and blindness? Will I not elevate that to higher activity? Will I now not shift all those gears continuously? Play a game like that. Now, the symbolism of all of this in Christian ritualism occurs in the evening, where a fire is lit. And to my mind, one of the most beautiful religious ceremonies take place. Because from this fire, a new fire is blessed, typically outside the church. Inside the church, you'll have to call the fire brigade. And its flames should be such that they dispel the darkness and light up the night. Something that gives us hope. Again, coming back to the Israelites in the desert, a light leading them forward. And everybody who present there, they hold candles to which the light of a new candle, called a Paschal candle, is lit from the fire. And it's gradually passed from person to person within the church or even outside, and symbolizes this transformation from darkness to light. That beautiful ancient prayer, Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyoti gamaya, mrityo amritam gamaya. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light, from death to immortality. Three variations of the same theme. When we are led from the truth or from the untruth to the truth, it is the same as going from darkness to light. And this vigilance is a symbol, of course, of our capacity to do this. So it's gradually passed on, and then what is called the liturgy of the word follows. First of all, with readings from sacred scripture. This is a reflection of our own inner spiritual life, how we can gain inspiration from teachings, inspired teachings. And then, of course, that leads us ultimately to the Easter Sunday itself. We'll talk more about that, of course, tomorrow. And with our traditional question and answer sessions, but we'll orientate it toward this wonderful universal celebration of Easter and all its symbols and so on. On this day, though, we remember, and we start off with the midnight, of course, going into the Sunday and celebrating the glorious sunrise, if you will, of the glorious deity within us. Now, from what you've heard from me now, you'll realize something important. This whole process is our own spiritual journey. It's a symbol of our own spiritual journey. How we enter into our own city, into our own dwelling place, how there's glory, how if we want to access our own innermost being, we have to put ourselves aside, the prophet-actor complex that we call I, in order to create an avenue for something glorious to open up and move and light up everything everywhere. And we have to have this sense of expectation, sense of listening, sense of poise, a sense of vigil. We have to be vigilant, not just at the moment of meditation, but that won't work unless in our working, waking, normal so-called life, we're also vigilant. We're vigilant of every moment. That becomes a kind of joyful sporting game for us, where we all the time practice the divine presence. That's the easiest way for us, practicing the presence of God. Just to remind you that at first a novice, if you will, in spiritual life. Of course, nobody really who comes is a novice. The whole of our life is spiritual, be it this life, be it our previous life. The whole thing is a drive, a movement, an exodus out of the desert conditions of slavery to the land of milk and honey and freedom. So I give them a book, Practicing the Presence by Brother Lawrence. I was about 14 or 15 when there was, maybe 15 probably, when a school teacher, who is a Burmese school teacher actually, understanding my orientation and my spiritual journey toward Eastern philosophy, said, "Oh, you need this book, Practicing the Presence by Brother Lawrence." And having read it and reading it and seeing how simple and profound it is, it's a book that I recommend everybody. And most people in the Western Vedantic movement, also Eastern, will have picked up this book and recognized the utility in it for devotional purposes. So with that, with these few thoughts, then I'll leave you. Please enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and enjoy tomorrow as well, and enjoy your holidays, because more or less everywhere there are public holidays now. In Ireland, culminates at the end of Monday. And for Christians, however, the festival goes right through, actually. It goes beyond just the formal Easter, which is there. And I'm told it goes on to Pentecost and so on, those kinds of things. Those who are Christians will be familiar with the liturgical calendar things. In any event, we have to be careful not to be orientated toward dogmatism, but orientated toward what is the inner meaning of it, and to adopt what is meaningful for us. And if it is not meaningful, then we have to leave it. That becomes blind faith. Not only has it no meaning, it becomes damaging to us also, because it becomes superstition. And so all these festivals, be it Christian, be it Hindu, be it Jewish, or be it simply of the humanistic type, going back to, say, pre-Christian or pre-religious rituals, what unfortunately is called pagan. And pagans who go along that line don't think that the word pagan is derogatory. But those of us who understand the etymology of the word and the origin of the concepts will feel it may not be the most suitable word to use. In any event, whatever you use, whatever concept you have, make sure it leads you to a depth of understanding that becomes practical enough to open up something inside you. And therein starts your spiritual journey. So with those few thoughts, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.